The empty street, the city was dead. Shops stood empty. Cars rested on broken roads, and tall towers looked like black teeth against the red sky. The world of humans had collapsed long ago, and silence was now the only ruler. But still, in the middle of ruins, one man lived. He was a survivor. No one knew his name, no one asked, because there was no one left to ask every day. He sat beside a small stall made from wood and metal scraps. On that stall he cooked food, simple bread, boiled water, sometimes dried meat. He had nothing special, but in this broken world, even small food was more precious than gold. The man's eyes always moved, searching the empty streets. He knew danger lived everywhere. Hungry people, wild beasts, and sometimes raiders who killed for a single bite. Still, he did not leave the stall. It was the only thing that gave him purpose. He believed that if he kept cooking, maybe life would return. Maybe one day, someone would sit at his stall, not with fear, but with hope. The air was hot, heavy with smoke. The ground carried the smell of metal and blood. The man wiped sweat from his face as he placed bread on a plate. And then, from the corner of his eye, he saw movement, 2 figures. Walking slowly, like shadows, he reached for his knife, ready to fight, but when they came closer, he froze. They were not human. They were 2 alien girls, their skin pale, their eyes glowing faint blue. Their clothes were torn, their steps weak. They looked more like ghosts than living beings. The man did not speak. He only watched as they stopped in front of his stall. For a moment, silence ruled again. The wind blew ash between them, like the world itself was holding its breath. The taller alien girl opened her mouth, her voice shaking. "We are hungry," she whispered. "We need food." Her companion stood behind her, trembling. The man said nothing, his knife still tight in his hand. He had seen tricks before, strangers acting weak before attacking. But these 2 looked truly broken, their bones showing under their skin. Their eyes carried the same thing he once saw in his own reflection: desperation. Then came the words that made his heart turn cold. "If you feed us," the taller girl said, "we will give you our bodies." The smaller one lowered her head. Ashamed but silent, they were not lying. Their voices carried no pride, no strength, only hunger. The man's jaw tightened. This was the price of survival now. Flesh for food, even alien flesh. But he did not move. His eyes stayed on them, searching, waiting. The girls stood weakly, their legs shaking, as if one more minute without food would end them. The man slowly put down his knife. He reached for the bread on the plate. The taller girl's eyes widened. The smaller one took a step forward, and then the man held the bread in his hand, but he did not give it yet. He looked at them with sharp eyes. Finally he spoke, his voice calm but hard. "You offer your bodies for food," he said. "But I want to know, why did you come to me?" The girls froze. The taller one tried to answer, but her lips only trembled. The smaller one finally whispered, "Because we heard humans are different." The wind howled through the broken street, carrying their words like a secret. The man narrowed his eyes. Different, that word echoed in his mind. What did they know about humans that even humans themselves had forgotten? He lowered the bread slowly, his hand still shaking. The alien girl stared at him, waiting for his answer. But the man said nothing. Not yet. The scene ended with silence, heavy and sharp, and the question of what choice the human would make hung in the air like a blade. The human's choice. The human held the bread in his hand, but he did not give it. The 2 alien girls stared at him with eyes full of hunger and fear. They had offered their bodies, thinking this was the only way to survive, but the man did not move, his silence pressing harder than any weapon. The fire beside his stall burned low, its light dancing on the ruins around them. The broken city seemed to watch, waiting for his decision. Finally, the man placed the bread on the table. The taller alien girl reached for it with trembling hands, but he raised his palm to stop her. "First eat this," he said, placing a smaller piece of bread before them. "No payment." His voice was low, steady like a stone in water. The girls froze, confused. They looked at each other, unsure if it was a trick, but their hunger was stronger than their doubt. The smaller one quickly grabbed the bread and bit it. Her eyes closed as tears rolled down her face. The taller one followed, eating with shaky hands for a moment. The ruins were filled only with the sound of chewing. Desperate and raw, the man watched quietly. His knife still near his hand, he trusted no one. Not humans, not aliens, not even himself. But something in their weakness reminded him of the days when he too had starved. When he had almost given up. He remembered sitting under a broken bridge, rain falling like knives, his stomach empty for days. Back then, no one had helped him, but he had survived. Now he wondered why. The taller girl finished her piece and whispered, "Why? Why give food for nothing?" Her voice cracked as if she had forgotten how kindness sounded. The man leaned back, his eyes scanning the streets before answering. "Because you are still alive," he said, "and that is reason enough." The girls looked at him as if he had spoken magic. In their world, survival always demanded payment: blood, flesh, or loyalty. But this human asked for nothing. That made them afraid. The smaller girl finally spoke, her voice soft but sharp. "On our planet, no one shares food. Even family takes from each other." She lowered her head, her thin hands shaking. "Why are you different?" The man did not answer quickly. He poured water into a metal cup and slid it toward them. As they drank, he spoke slowly. "Humans were always different. Even before the collapse," he paused, remembering. "Sometimes it is our strength, sometimes our weakness." The taller girl frowned, not understanding, but the man did not explain further. Night began to fall, shadows stretching across the street. The air grew colder, the wind sharper. The man placed more bread near the fire. Letting the smell rise, the aliens sat close together, their bodies shaking from exhaustion, but their eyes never left him. He had given food without taking, and that made him dangerous. Because they knew, no kindness comes free in a dead world. The taller one finally whispered to her companion, "He is not like the others." The smaller one nodded, her glowing eyes watching the man closely. "But if he is different," she whispered back, "then what does he want?" The man stared into the fire, his face calm but unreadable. He could hear them, but he gave no answer. He simply reached for his knife and laid it flat on the table. Not raised, not threatening, but not hidden either. It was a message, a promise, that he would protect what was his, and maybe for tonight. That included them. The fire cracked. The city groaned under the wind, and somewhere far away, a howl echoed through the ruins. The girls shivered, pulling closer to the warmth of the stall. The man did not look at them, but in his silence, there was something heavier than words. A choice had been made, not to trade, not to own, but to keep them alive, at least for now, still. As darkness covered the streets, the girls could not sleep. They whispered to each other, fear in every word. "If he does not want our bodies," the smaller one said, "then why does he keep us here?" The taller one's answer was only a single breath. "Because humans are dangerous in ways we do not yet understand." The fire burned low, their eyes heavy with exhaustion, and the human, sitting still as stone, kept watch over the empty streets, waiting, always waiting for what tomorrow would bring. The broken aliens, the fire burned low, its smoke twisting into the cold night. The human sat silent beside his stall, his knife close, his eyes sharper than the flames. The two alien girls sat on the ground near him, their thin arms wrapped around themselves, their bodies shivering in the ruins. They had eaten, they had drunk water, but still, their eyes carried the shadow of hunger, not only of the body but also of the soul. When the smaller one finally spoke, her voice was soft like breaking glass. "Our world is gone," she whispered. "We saw it die." Her companion lowered her head, as if the memory itself was heavy enough to break her neck. The man turned slightly, his face half hidden in the firelight. He did not ask, but his silence invited them to speak. The taller girl lifted her head, her eyes glowing faint blue in the dark. "We were children of an empire," she said, "a kingdom that once ruled many skies." Her lips trembled, but hunger came and war came, and even stars were not enough to save us. Her hands clenched tightly, as if holding on to something that no longer existed. The smaller one nodded, her tears reflecting the fire. "We walked through cities where our people ate each other, where mothers sold their own children, where hope was burned into ash." The human did not move, but his jaw tightened. He had seen humans do the same. He knew their pain was not alien, it was universal. Collapse made monsters of every race. The taller girl's voice cracked. "We ran from raiders, we ran from hunger. We ran from the silence of our own kind." She looked at him with sharp eyes now, as if testing his heart. "And then, we heard of you." The man's hand froze above the fire. "Of me?" he asked, his tone low. The smaller one nodded quickly. "Not you only, but humans, all humans," she whispered. "They said even when your world fell, you did not die." Her words carried both fear and wonder. "You survived while others gave up." The man's eyes darkened, the firelight flickering across his face. He wanted to deny it, but he could not. It was true. Humans had not died. Even when they should have, they had crawled, bled, killed, stolen. But they lived. And sometimes survival itself was a weapon sharper than steel. The girls leaned closer to the fire, their thin forms shaking with exhaustion. The taller one whispered, "Do you know what they called you in the last days of our empire?" The man looked at her, his face unreadable. She swallowed hard before speaking. "They called humans, the stubborn ones." Her voice carried weight as if the word itself was a warning. "Not strong, not rich, not wise, but stubborn," the smaller one added. "They said humans do not stop even when their bones break, even when their hope dies." She looked at him as if searching for proof in his eyes. "And now, sitting here, we see it is true." The man stayed silent, but the knife in his hand reflected the fire. He did not argue because he knew they were right. He had lost everything, yet here he was, cooking food in a dead city, refusing to fall. Maybe that was what it meant to be human. The wind outside grew stronger, carrying the distant cry of something not human. The girls shivered again, and the man finally spoke. "Eat, sleep. Stay near the fire," he said. "Tomorrow will test us all." His voice was calm but heavy, like iron. The taller girl lowered her eyes, whispering, "You do not ask for our bodies, you do not demand our loyalty. You only give." Her voice shook. "But no one gives without reason." The man looked at her, his face a mask of shadow and flame. "My reason is simple," he said. "If life still beats inside you, then you are worth saving." The words struck them harder than hunger, harder than pain. They looked at him not with fear now, but with something else, something close to hope. Still, in the corner of her mind, the smaller one carried a secret she had not yet spoken. Her hand touched the hidden pouch on her torn clothes, where a faint light glowed against her skin. She whispered only to herself, too soft for the man to hear. "He does not know what we bring." The fire burned lower. The human's eyes closed for a moment. But the night carried more than silence. It carried secrets waiting to break. The secret gift. The night was long. The fire at the stall burned low, and the streets of the dead city were silent except for the sound of the wind. The human sat still, his knife near his hand, his eyes half closed but never truly resting. The two alien girls slept close to each other, their thin forms covered by torn cloth, their faces pale under the moonlight. But one of them, the smaller girl, did not sleep deeply. Her hand rested against her chest, feeling the faint glow from the hidden pouch inside her clothes. She whispered in her own language, words soft and broken. "He does not know. He must not know, not yet." The crystal inside the pouch pulsed like a heartbeat, light escaping through the fabric for only a moment before fading again. Morning came slowly, the sun weak behind clouds of ash. The human cooked bread over the small fire, the smell spreading into the cold air. The girls woke, their eyes heavy, their bodies weaker but alive. He placed food before them without words, and they ate quickly, as if afraid it might vanish. But as they ate, the glow from the smaller girl's pouch grew stronger. The human noticed, his sharp eyes catching the light. His hand moved toward his knife, but he did not draw it. Instead, he spoke calmly. "What do you carry?" The smaller girl froze, bread still in her hand. The taller one looked at her with surprise. You didn't tell him?" She whispered, her voice sharp with fear. The human's gaze grew harder. His patience was not endless, and secrets in a dead world could mean death. Finally, the smaller one pulled out the pouch, her hand shaking from it. She lifted a small crystal, glowing faint blue, the light strong enough to paint their faces. The human's breath caught for a moment, but his expression stayed cold. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low. The taller girl answered quickly, her words rushing as if to protect her companion. "It is all that remains of our people's core," she said. "Our empire fell, our ships burned. But this survived." The crystal pulsed brighter when near the human. The smaller girl whispered, her eyes wide. "It reacts to him." The taller one stared at the light, fear mixing with awe. "This never happened before." "Never with any of us." The man frowned, his fingers tightening on the table. He had seen many strange things since the collapse, but nothing like this. "Why does it react to me?" he asked, his voice colder now. The girls shook their heads. "We don't know," the smaller one said quickly. "But the elders of our world said the crystal would reveal truth when the time was right." The human stared at the crystal, the light shining stronger the closer it came to him. It was almost alive, like it recognized him. His chest tightened, an old memory flashing in his mind, dreams he had of fire, of stars, of voices whispering his name. He pushed the thought away, his hand slamming the table. "What truth?" he demanded. The taller girl lowered her eyes, her voice weak. "Maybe the truth is that humans are not like the rest of us." Her words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and dangerous. The smaller girl clutched the crystal tightly, her tears falling. "This is why we came to you," she confessed. "Not only for food, not only for survival, but because the crystal chose you." The man's face hardened, his silence heavier than anger. He stood slowly, the knife in his hand, the firelight burning across his face. The girls trembled, unsure if he would strike, but instead he turned his back, looking out at the ruined street. The wind carried dust and ash, the sound of a broken world. "Whatever this thing is," he said, his voice quiet but sharp. "I did not choose it," he paused, his eyes narrowing at the horizon. "But if it chose me, then it will regret it." The crystal pulsed again, brighter than before, as if answering him. The girls held it close, fear and hope fighting inside their hearts. And in the silence of the ruined city, something shifted, something unseen, as if the world itself had awakened to the crystal's glow. The man's grip on his knife tightened. The aliens exchanged a glance, their secret no longer hidden, and though the fire burned, the air grew colder because now, none of them could deny it. The crystal had chosen, and it had chosen a human. Shadows in the dark. The crystal glowed faintly in the hands of the smaller alien girl. The human kept his back turned, his knife still in his grip, his body tense like a coiled spring. The taller girl whispered to her sister, fear running through her voice. "He does not trust us. He may never trust us." The smaller one nodded, clutching the crystal close to her chest, as if its light could protect her. The morning sun was pale, weak behind ash clouds. The broken city stood silent, but silence in this world was never safe. The human's sharp eyes scanned the horizon. Something in the air felt wrong, a weight, a pressure, as if unseen eyes were watching. He had lived too long in the ruins to mistake that feeling. Danger was close, he spoke suddenly, his voice low but firm. "Stay behind the stall, do not speak, do not move unless I say." The alien girls obeyed instantly, their fear of him now mixed with something else, trust. The human crouched near the fire, his knife hidden under his hand, his eyes narrowing at the distant street, and then it came. Shadows moving between broken buildings, figures slipping quietly through rubble, their footsteps light but hurried. Raiders the human had fought them before. Scavengers of the dead, killers of the weak, they hunted food, water, anything that could be taken. And when there was nothing left, they hunted flesh. The first raider stepped into view, his body covered in rusted armor, a jagged blade in his hand. His face was painted with ash and blood, his eyes wild with hunger. Behind him, more figures appeared. 5, 6, maybe more. The alien girls gasped, covering their mouths, their glowing eyes wide with terror. The human did not move. He had expected this. Raiders always smelled fire and food. "Like wolves smelling blood," one of the raiders called out, his voice harsh and mocking. "A stall in this dead place? What do you sell, human? Bread? Or maybe the meat of those pretty pets hiding behind you?" The group laughed, their laughter sharp like knives in the air. The taller alien girl shivered. Pressing against her sister, the smaller one whispered, "He will fight them," but her voice trembled. Unsure, the human stood slowly, his knife glinting in the dim light. He did not answer the raider's words. He only stared, cold and still, his silence heavier than a threat. The leader of the raiders stepped closer, licking cracked lips. "You think you can keep food from us? You think you can keep them?" He pointed at the alien girls, his teeth sharp with a cruel grin. "We will take what is ours," the man finally spoke, his voice quiet but sharp as broken glass. "Try." That one word made the raiders pause, their laughter fading for a breath. Then they rushed forward, blades flashing, boots crushing ash. The girl screamed and ducked behind the stall, clutching the crystal tightly. Its light grew brighter, pulsing as if it felt the danger. The human moved fast, too fast for the raiders to expect. His knife struck the first man's throat, blood spilling before the body even hit the ground. The second raider swung, but the human twisted, slamming his elbow into the man's skull, snapping bone. The firelight caught his face, cold, hard, alive with something burning deeper than rage. The alien girls watched with wide eyes, their fear changing into awe. The raiders screamed, their confidence breaking as one after another fell. The human fought not like a man but like something older. Stronger, every strike was final, every move made with brutal precision. When the last raider stumbled back, his weapon shaking in his hand, his eyes wide with terror, he did not call the human a man. He whispered, voice broken, "Monster." Then he ran, his shadow vanishing into the ruins. Leaving the dead behind, the human stood in silence, blood dripping from his knife, his chest rising and falling slowly. The alien girls clutched each other, their hearts racing, their bodies frozen. They had seen killers before, but never like this. The smaller one whispered, her voice shaking, "He fights like no other." The taller one nodded, her eyes locked on him. "This is why they fear humans," she said softly. "Because even when the world ends, humans do not." The fire cracked again, the smoke rising into the gray sky. The human wiped the blood from his blade and returned to his stall. He sat in silence as if nothing had happened. But the air around him had changed. Even the ruins seemed to know. Something far more dangerous than raiders lived here now. The alien memory, the ruins were quiet again. The bodies of raiders lay scattered on the broken street, their blood sinking into the dust. The fire at the stall flickered weakly, but its light could not chase away the heavy silence left after the fight. The human sat still, cleaning the blade with calm hands, as if death was nothing new to him. The two alien girls watched him, their faces pale, their hearts pounding. They had seen warriors before, they had seen killers, but never something like him. The smaller one whispered, her voice trembling, "He fought them all, alone." The taller girl did not answer, her glowing eyes locked on the human's face. She remembered something, an old story told in whispers when she was young, a legend spoken by the elders of her people before their empire had collapsed. She swallowed hard, her lips parting slowly. There were tales about humans. The smaller one turned to her in confusion. Tales of these creatures. Her sister nodded, her voice low. Yes, long ago, before the fall, before our empire burned. There were warnings. She looked back at the human, who sat sharpening his knife with steady strokes, the sound scraping through the silence like metal on bone. They said humans were stubborn beyond reason. The smaller alien frowned, not understanding. Stubborn? The taller one nodded again. Not the strongest, not the most clever. But they never stopped, even when they should have died. Her voice shook as she spoke. They were called cursed survivors, creatures who carried something inside them that no other race carried. The human raised his eyes slightly. Though he said nothing, it was as if he already knew the weight of her words. The taller girl continued, her tone almost like a prayer. They said humans heal faster than they should. They rise again when others stay down. They carry pain like fire and turn it into strength. She shivered. And when war comes, they do not fight like soldiers. They fight like storms. The smaller girl's hands tightened around the crystal. Its glow reflecting in her wide eyes, she looked at the human with both fear and wonder. Is that why the crystal reacts to him? She whispered. Her sister did not answer. Instead, she leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. Watch his hands, she whispered. He bleeds. Yet the wound closes already, the smaller one gasped. She saw it too. Small cuts from the battle fading on his skin, healing faster than any normal body should. The man did not try to hide it, he only kept working, his silence heavier than any truth. The taller girl spoke again, her voice soft. There was another part to the tale, she said. A part the elders never told openly. Her sister leaned closer, her heart racing. What part? The taller one's eyes glowed faintly in the firelight. They said one day when the stars fall quiet and empires crumble, the last fire of the universe will burn inside a human. The smaller one's breath caught in her throat. Her gaze snapped back to the man, who sat in silence, his eyes hidden in shadow. The crystal pulsed brighter in her hand, its light beating in time with her racing heart. It is him, she whispered without meaning to. The taller girl gripped her arm, silencing her. Do not say it yet, not to him, she warned, her voice urgent. If he learns too soon, it may break him, or it may awaken something we cannot control. The human stood suddenly, his knife sliding back into its sheath. He looked out over the dead street, his eyes scanning the ruins as if listening to something only he could hear. The girls froze, holding their breath. The man's voice came, low and sharp. Something is moving in the dark. The fire cracked, the crystal glowed brighter. The wind carried strange sounds through the ruins, shadows shifting, whispers rising, the world itself restless. The girls pressed closer together, clutching the crystal, their memories of legend now alive before their eyes. The human stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his knife, his back straight, his eyes hard. He was ready for whatever came, because legends or not, he was still human, and in a broken world, that was enough to make monsters fear. The new hunger. The night dragged on. The human did not sleep. His eyes fixed on the ruined streets, his knife resting on the table. The alien girls stayed close to the fire, their hands gripping the glowing crystal, their hearts too restless for rest. The raiders were gone, the silence returned, but the silence now felt heavier, as if the city itself held its breath. By morning, the fire had burned low and the food was nearly gone. The man placed the last pieces of bread before the girls, pushing the plate without a word. They hesitated, looking at him. "What about you?" the smaller one asked, her voice soft. The human shook his head. "I will find more," he said calmly. "Eat." His voice carried no doubt, as if his survival was already certain. The taller girl lowered her eyes, guilt heavy in her chest. "We are slowing you down," she whispered. "If you travel alone, you live longer." The man's gaze sharpened, his jaw tight. He did not answer, but his silence spoke clearly. He had already chosen. He would not abandon them as they ate. The crystal pulsed again, brighter in the daylight. The smaller girl held it carefully, her fingers trembling. "It grows stronger," she whispered, "as if it feels the hunger too." The taller one frowned, her eyes narrowing. "No, not hunger," she said slowly. "Something else." She looked at the human. "Show it to him." The smaller girl hesitated, but finally she lifted the crystal closer to the man. The moment it touched the air near him, the glow flared, filling the stall with blue light. The man froze, his breath catching. The world around him blurred, fading into shadow, and then he saw visions, not dreams, not memories, but something older. He saw stars burning, worlds crumbling, empires collapsing into ash, and always in the middle of the ruins. He saw humans not strong, not mighty, but still standing, still moving forward. And in the final vision, he saw himself, a single man holding fire in his hand while alien armies bowed in silence. The light snapped away, the world returning with a rush. The human staggered, his hand gripping the table, sweat on his brow. The girls stared at him, their faces pale. "You saw it," the taller one said, her voice trembling. The man's eyes burned with a strange fire. "What was that?" he demanded. The smaller one whispered, "The truth the crystal carries." He looked at them sharply. "Truth? Or lies made to trap me?" The taller one shook her head. "No, not lies. Not a trap," she said quickly. "Our people feared this crystal because it shows what may come, not what is." She swallowed hard, her voice weak. "And always, it chose humans." The human turned away, his jaw tight. He did not want to believe, but the vision still burned in his mind. He had seen his own face in the flames, and deep inside he feared it was real. The day passed with hunger pressing harder. The man searched through ruins, finding only scraps, rotten grain, broken cans, nothing enough. The girls grew weaker, their steps slower, their eyes dull with exhaustion. The smaller one clutched the crystal close, whispering to it as if it could hear. "Show us the path," she begged softly. And for a moment it answered. The glow spread across her hand, forming a faint shape, an arrow pointing toward the distant horizon. The human returned, his eyes narrowing at the sight. "What is it doing?" The taller girl whispered, "It wants us to follow." The man's grip tightened on his knife, suspicion sharp in his eyes, but hunger pressed on them all. The last of the bread was gone, and the air grew colder. Finally, he gave a single nod. "Then we follow," he said. The crystal pulsed brighter, as if pleased. The girls clung to it with trembling hands, their fear mixed with hope. The human led the way through broken streets, his eyes scanning shadows, his knife always ready behind him. The alien girls whispered to each other. "He does not believe yet," the smaller one said. The taller one answered, her voice low and certain. "He will, because the crystal shows not what we want, but what we cannot escape." The city groaned under the weight of silence, and above them, unseen, something moved in the sky, watching, waiting. The offer reversed. The human walked ahead through the ruins. The two alien girls followed behind, their weak steps guided by the crystal's glow. The broken city stretched endlessly, filled with shadows, with silence, with dangers waiting unseen. But none of it frightened them more than the man they followed. They whispered softly to each other when his back was turned. "He does not believe the visions," the smaller one said. Clutching the crystal close, her sister nodded, her glowing eyes fixed on the human's tall figure. "He does not need to believe," she replied. "The crystal believes for him." The man stopped suddenly. Raising his hand for silence, the girls froze, their breaths held. From the distance came a faint sound, the echo of footsteps that were not theirs. The human's knife slid silently into his hand. He moved toward the shadows, his steps steady, his body sharp like steel. But the sound faded, leaving only the wind. He returned to them, his eyes hard, his silence unbroken. The girls saw it again, that strange fire in him, not of hunger, not of fear, but of something stronger, and in that moment, they understood when night came. They rested near a collapsed building. The human built a small fire, its flames weak but warm. The girls sat close to it, the crystal glowing faintly in their hands. They looked at him, his face hidden in the light and shadow. He said nothing, as always, but his presence filled the silence like thunder. The taller girl bowed her head, her voice trembling. "We were wrong," she whispered. The man looked at her, his knife resting across his knees. "Wrong?" he repeated, his voice low. The smaller one nodded quickly, her eyes wet with tears. "Yes, wrong. We thought survival meant selling our bodies, trading shame for food," her voice broke. "But you showed us another way." The taller one leaned forward, her face serious. "You gave without taking. You fought without asking. You carried us when even our own people would have left us to die." She lowered her head again. "You are not a man to bargain with, you are a man to follow." The human's eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing in them. "Follow?" he asked, his tone sharp. The girls looked at each other, then slowly, together, they slid down to their knees before him. The smaller one placed the glowing crystal on the ground between them, the light shining brighter as if it approved. They bowed their heads low, their voices one. "We offer not our bodies, but our loyalty." The man's jaw tightened, his grip on the knife firm. Loyalty. He had heard that word before, in another life, before the collapse, before everything burned. Loyalty was dangerous. Loyalty meant chains. He looked at the crystal, its light pulsing stronger, brighter, as if urging him to accept. But he said nothing. The taller girl lifted her head, her voice filled with both fear and courage. "If the crystal chooses you, then we choose you too," she said. "We will walk where you walk, fight where you fight, and if death comes, we will face it at your side." The smaller one nodded, pressing her forehead against the ground. "You are more than a survivor. You are the fire that remains when all else turns to ash." The fire cracked, sparks rising into the dark sky. The human sat still, his silence heavier than the night itself. He looked at the girls, kneeling, trembling, waiting for his word, but he gave none. Instead, he turned his gaze to the horizon. The ruins stretched forever, the world broken, the stars faint above the ash clouds, and the crystal glowed brighter, its light reflecting in his eyes. He did not accept their loyalty, but he did not reject it either. His silence was enough. The girls remained kneeling, their hearts racing, their breaths fast. They did not need his words. They already knew from now on. Their lives were his, not because he asked, but because he was human, and humans, they now understood, carried something inside them no empire, no army, no world could destroy. The night grew colder, the shadows deeper, and far away, unseen, something stirred in the darkness, watching, waiting, preparing. The age of silence was ending, and the age of humans was beginning. The human's truth. The fire burned low in the ruins. The two alien girls still knelt before the human, their heads bowed, the glowing crystal between them. They had offered not their bodies but their loyalty, and the crystal's light seemed to agree, pulsing brighter with every heartbeat. The man sat silent, his knife resting across his knees, his eyes fixed on the flames. His silence stretched long, heavy, making the girls tremble. Finally, the taller one lifted her head, her voice quiet but steady. "We gave you our loyalty," she said, "but you give us nothing in return, not even your name." The human looked at her with cold eyes, his face unreadable. "My name does not matter," he said, his tone like iron. "What matters is survival." The smaller girl shook her head, clutching the crystal close. "No, not only survival," she whispered. We have seen many survivors, raiders, thieves, monsters. They live, but they are empty. Her glowing eyes burned as she looked at him. You are not empty. The man's jaw tightened, his silence pressing again. But then he spoke, his voice low, his words carrying weight. You think I am different because I fight, because I give, because I do not take. He shook his head slowly. You are wrong. The girls froze, confused, fear flashing in their eyes. The man leaned closer, his face hard in the firelight. I am not strong, I am not kind, I am not a hero, he said. What I am is human, the taller girl whispered. And what does that mean? The man's eyes burned, his voice sharp like broken stone. It means when the world falls, when everything turns to dust, when hope is dead, we still move forward. His hand tightened on the knife, his knuckles white. We are not the fastest, not the smartest, not the strongest. But we are the ones who refuse to die, the smaller girl gasped softly, her tears glimmering in the crystal's light. The taller one felt her chest tighten, his words striking deeper than any blade. The man continued, his voice steady, his gaze locked on the fire. When hunger comes, we crawl. When pain comes, we bleed. When death comes, we fight anyway. He paused, his breath slow and heavy. That is our truth. The girls exchanged a glance, their hearts trembling. They had seen it already. He gave them food when he had none to spare. He fought raiders when death was certain. He carried silence like a weapon. This was not just survival, it was something else. Something fiercer, the human spirit. The taller girl whispered, her voice shaking. Maybe this is why the crystal chose you. The man turned his head slightly, his eyes narrowing at the glowing stone. It does not matter what it chose, he said firmly. I did not ask for it, I do not want it. But even as he spoke, the crystal pulsed brighter, answering him with its silent voice. The smaller one clutched it close, her voice soft but certain. You cannot run from what you are. The human stood, his shadow stretching tall against the ruins. He looked out at the broken city. At the endless ash-filled sky, his silence returned. But this time it was different. It was not doubt, not denial. It was the silence of a man who knew the truth but was not ready to accept it. The girls stayed kneeling. Their loyalty already given, they did not ask again. They did not beg, they only watched him, their hearts full of fear and hope. The fire cracked, sending sparks into the night. The man finally spoke, his voice quiet but sharp. You follow me, you eat my food, you carry your crystal? He turned back to them, his eyes burning with that strange human fire. But understand this, humans are not chosen because of power. He leaned closer, his voice a whisper heavy with truth. Humans are chosen because we refuse to fall. The crystal pulsed brighter, almost blinding. The girls lowered their heads again, their loyalty turning into faith, and somewhere in the ruins, something moved, the world was changing. The human had spoken his truth and the universe was listening. The dawn of a new age, the fire at the stall had burned to ashes. The broken city was silent, its towers black against the pale sky. The human stood tall, his knife at his side, his shadow stretching long over the ruins. The two alien girls knelt before him, the crystal glowing between their hands, its light stronger than ever before. He had spoken his truth. Humans did not survive because of strength, or cleverness, or even hope. They survived because they refused to fall. The words still echoed in the girls' minds, filling them with fear and awe. The taller one rose slowly, her glowing eyes locked on him. You are more than we believed, she whispered. The smaller one clutched the crystal close, her voice trembling. And if the crystal is right, you are not only our savior, but the savior of what remains. The man turned his gaze toward the horizon. The city was dead, but beyond it somewhere, there were lands unbroken, rivers still flowing, fields still waiting, perhaps even people. Survivors like him, lost but alive. He tightened his grip on the knife, his voice calm but heavy. Then we will not stay here. The girls looked up quickly, surprise flashing in their faces. Leave? The smaller one asked. The man nodded once. This place is dust, he said. There is nothing left to build. Only shadows and bones, he pointed at the crystal, its light pulsing brighter with each word. That thing shows a path. Then we follow it. The taller girl bowed her head. We will walk where you walk, she said. Her voice steady, the smaller one added, clutching the stone, and we will not turn away. No matter what waits for us. The man's silence was his answer. He began walking, his steps firm, his body unshaken by the weight of death around him. The girls followed close behind, their loyalty already sealed. The crystal glowed brighter, guiding them through the broken streets. Its light cut through the ruins like a beacon, showing a direction beyond the dead city. As they walked, the wind carried whispers of fear. From shadows, hidden eyes watched them. Survivors, raiders, things that crawled after collapse. They saw the man and the light he carried, and they whispered his name in fear. Not human, not man, but something else. A monster of survival, a fire that refused to die by nightfall. The three reached the edge of the city. Behind them lay only ruins and blood. Ahead of them stretched endless wasteland. The man stopped, his eyes scanning the horizon. The crystal pulsed stronger, as if it felt their hesitation. The smaller girl held it high, its glow painting their faces in blue light. "The path is clear," she whispered. "It waits for you." The man looked at her, his jaw tight, his silence sharp. He knew the truth now. The crystal had not chosen him for comfort. It had chosen him for burden, because only humans could carry such weight and keep moving. He turned back toward the wasteland, his voice steady. "Then we walk." The taller girl lowered her head. "The world may hate you, it may fear you, but it will follow you." The smaller one clutched the crystal to her chest. "And if the stars fall, you will still rise." The man said nothing, but inside his silence was the fire of his people, the fire that had burned since the first humans walked under the sky. It was not strength, it was not brilliance. It was the refusal to kneel, the refusal to end. The three walked into the wasteland, the crystal's light leading them. The ruined city behind them whispered with the voices of the dead. But ahead, the wind carried something new. Not despair, not hunger, but the faint sound of tomorrow. The human's shadow stretched long under the pale moon. The alien girls walked at his side, no longer offering their bodies, no longer begging for food. Now they walked with loyalty, with belief, with something close to faith, and the crystal pulsed like a heartbeat, a promise that the age of humans was not over. It was only beginning.